So when we join the monastic community, the monastic order, all of our afflictions and opinions and everything else about us come right with us. We leave our lay clothes and hair behind, but everything else comes with, whether we want it or not. And so working with everything that is coming with us into the monastery is part of our practice. Yeah, that's what practice means. It means to deal with our afflictions, to learn to transform the mind. So it's not like we come in perfectly pure and then we practice the Dharma. The Dharma practice is the practice of clearing away the afflictions, the karmic imprints, and creating a lot of new habits. One of the qualities that comes with us into the monastery is our self-centered thought. The thought that's concerned with ourselves foremost. My happiness is more important than others. My suffering hurts more than theirs. And the slogan of the self-centered thought is, I want what I want when I want it. Now, needless to say, whenever we live amongst any sentient beings, especially ones we live in close contact with, the focus on I want what I want when I want it is going to clash with others who want what they want when they want it. And all of that will probably clash with the guidelines that are meant to harmonize all the people so that they can live together happily and peacefully. So dealing with our self-centered thought, which is so automatic in us, it runs our life without our even being aware of it very often. Dealing with that is a major aspect of monastic training. And one way the self-centered thought appears is, what's good for my Dharma practice? What do I want to study? What do I want to do for offering service? What will I get out of this program? What will I get out of living here? So everything focused on our own practice. So that we can develop compassion for all sentient beings. So we need to broaden our mind and see that life together is not about us. It's not about our practice. It's about serving sentient beings, and it's about doing our role and being responsible to continue the Dharma and the Vinaya so that people in future generations can have access to these beautiful teachings and trainings. it's very important to understand that long-term purpose. And to really put our energy into doing something that's much bigger than ourselves and much more important than getting what we want when we want it, or not getting what we don't want when we don't want it. So to do this, turning to the Lamrim teachings on the disadvantages of self-centeredness, the benefits of cherishing others, and the kindness of other sentient beings. These three are quite important meditations to do regularly. And so let's cultivate that big mind that looks beyond ourselves, beyond this life, to the long-term benefit of sentient beings and the long-term existence of the Dharma and Vinaya in the world. And with that kind of motivation, let's share the Dharma today. So when I ordained, I thought taking precepts was all about just keeping the precepts. I thought that was all monastic life entailed, besides changing my hair and my clothes. And I thought the Sangha community was there to help me so that I could have a lot of time to practice. Yeah. Meaning sitting in my room by myself, meditating, because I was going to stay in Nepal forever and become a Buddha, go on a retreat and meditate, become a Buddha, and then I hadn't planned after that. Yeah, but you know, those of us in the early years, that was what we all wanted to do. And then we found out our teachers had different ideas for us. Yeah. So I was drinking my tea happily one day in the afternoon, and Venerable Elizabeth walked by and said, "Oh, Lama thinks it would be very good if you went to the center in Italy," and kept walking. And I stood there like, what? This wasn't in what I signed up for. So it really wasn't until I took full ordination and I received more teachings on Vinaya that I began to understand what monastic life was all about. That it wasn't just about me and what I wanted. Yeah. I remember so clearly talking to somebody at Kopan, and this person going on and on about something that just wasn't very interesting. And I was thinking, how can I get out of this conversation? I want to go meditate on compassion. Yeah? Didn't even realize how ridiculous that thought was, you know? So I think monastic education is quite important. Otherwise, we're really blindsided often by the difference between our idyllic vision and the reality of being a monastic. Yeah. And you know, reality always wins. Yeah. When it's a clash between my expectations and reality, my expectations always lose. Yeah. 100% failure. Yeah. And reality always wins. So the thing is to try and make our mind align with reality. Because like the president said, we want to be winners, not losers. He does say some good things. Yeah. Okay. So when we go through here, the reasons why the Buddha set up each precept, you'll see that it's not just, so that I can refine my practice. It's not just for that, So in the big heading of the detailed explanation, we had 3 subheadings, to promote harmony with the Sangha. Well, that's going on beyond me and what I want. The second subheading was to transform society. I thought that society was what I was giving up. And then the third one was to bring about individual liberation. That's what I want. Okay. And then, of course, there's the ultimate goal that follows after that. Okay, so yesterday we were talking about the first subheading of promoting harmony in the Sangha. In the Bhikshuni Posada, it talks about harmony in the Sangha, and I think this is the same in the Bhikshu Posada, that when there's harmony in the Sangha, then nirvana is easily attained. Yeah. And I thought about that for a long time, Why would the Buddha say that is, a major cause for nirvana being attained? I would have thought he would have said study and contemplation and meditation. But he said harmony in the Sangha. And when you look at it, even at the Buddha's time, there wasn't always harmony in the Sangha. And what happens when there isn't harmony is what we see going on in the groups that are having major scandals right now. Yeah. Everybody's fired up. People divide into factions. They're confused. They're attacking this one. They're attacking that one. They're dividing into sides. Then they criticize people, not only the person who's the leader of the other side, but everybody who belongs to them. And everybody's rooting for their side and saying the same thing vociferously, trying to knock it into other people's thick skulls that they're right and the other person's wrong. And does any Dharma practice get done? Yeah. Is there any study, contemplation, and meditation when people are quarreling? No. Yeah. So that's why, The Buddha said the harmony in the Sangha is the surest cause for nirvana. You know, why it's so important. Okay, so those first three were to create harmony in the Sangha. So among them, the first benefit of setting up the precepts, this we talked about yesterday, was to direct the monastics. So directing our body, speech, and mind in a constructive way. Because if we're all trying to do that, then we're going to be harmonious. Yeah. If we're not all trying to direct our body, speech, and mind in a constructive way, and if we don't have the same idea of what a constructive way is, then we're going to be at each other's throat, you know, and it's going to be pretty miserable. The second one, which we also discussed yesterday, was to make monastic peaceful and happy. And this builds on the first one, because when we're all directing our minds in a constructive way and have the same understanding of a constructive way, then we're peaceful and happy with each other. We support each other. We let the group support us. We enjoy practicing the Dharma. And Dharma should be enjoyable to practice. Yes, it's difficult, but we have to separate difficult from unenjoyable. Yeah, we often mix those two things up and think if it's difficult, it's got to be miserable to do. But difficult, the definition of difficult is not miserable. Okay, it just means it needs more energy. Yeah, but if we're putting our energy in a good direction, then we have a sense of internal satisfaction as we discover that we can do things that we didn't think we could do, and understand things that we didn't think we could understand, like how a septic system works or how a water system works. Yeah. When you live in a monastery, you have to study not just the Dharma, but everything else that makes the monastery work. Yeah. And some of these things are things that you may not be interested in and know absolutely nothing about, but it's necessary for the community to exist, and someone's got to do it. Yeah. And then the third quality of promoting harmony in the Sangha is to protect the monastics. Okay? So when we keep the 6 harmonies, you remember you discussed them a few days ago? So harmony in body, speech, and mind, harmony in precepts, harmony in resources, and harmony in views. Yeah. Okay. So when we practice that, then our mind, the Sangha is harmonious, and we protect our mind from all sorts of especially wrong views. Yeah. Wrong views aren't even actions of body and speech. They don't have arms and legs. But these are the things that destroy the Dharma. Yeah. Is people's wrong views. And it's often said that lay people fight over material possessions and the Sangha fights over views. Okay. So, yeah, we may have we debate, we discuss. Yeah, that kind of challenging of views is done for certain motivation to get us to think deeply about the teachings and to understand the teachings well. But it's when we're thinking about wrong views and we are deeply entrenched in our wrong views, that's when a lot of problems arise. So you can see in both the Bhikshu and Bhikshuni Vinaya, one of the biggest wrong views that, because it's mentioned several times in the Patimoksha, is thinking that sexual behavior is fine for one who's seeking awakening, So holding that wrong view, staying together with people who hold that wrong view, etc., etc. Yeah. So it's quite a serious one. So that's not the only wrong view. There's many other kinds of wrong views, but this is what destroys the Sangha from the inside. Okay? Because instead of practicing the Dharma, we advocate our own personal, ego-centered views that are incorrect. Try to pass them off as the Dharma, and it creates disharmony with the people we live with, and it activates people to create a lot of negative karma. So that's the real problem with wrong views, is that then we start acting out of these wrong views. Okay, and when the Sangha acts out of wrong views and has bad behavior, then, the existence of the Dharma is going to go down, because the Sangha is where people look for the Dharma to be preserved and to be passed down. Okay, so with Buddhism coming to the West, it's so important that we really study and know the Dharma, the Buddhist worldview. Yeah, and that we don't just cherry pick. Yeah, there's things that may be stressed in the scriptures that may not fit us so well. We can keep those on the back burner. For example, some people, especially those who grew up Catholic, which are a good chunk of people who are in Dharma, when they start talking about the lower realms, especially the hell realms, then they go, this is one thing I didn't like about Catholicism, and now I'm coming here and I'm being told, and they impute the Catholic view onto the Buddhist view and think that the Buddha is going to punish you if you have heretical views, because wrong views got translated as heresy because people didn't know English well at that time. And then people start thinking, if I don't believe anything, I'm going to be a heretic. I'm going to go to the Buddhist hell. This is terrible, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I don't think the Buddha really taught the hell realms anyway. Yeah? And so that's somebody's conclusion. The Buddha didn't teach hell realms. In fact, the Buddha didn't even teach rebirth. And so you have this whole section of what's called secular Buddhism now, of people, who want to use the Dharma as ethical guides and value the teachings on love and compassion. And that's fine. That helps them. That's good. But to say the Buddha didn't teach rebirth is totally incorrect. It's very clear that the Buddha did teach rebirth. Now, we may not have a lot of confidence in rebirth when we first start. Yeah, that's okay. Having doubts, having a correct assumption, you don't have a valid inference or direct perception yet, but you're open-minded. Yeah, that's fine. But it's when our ideas calcify into cynical, stubborn ideas, and we try and change the teachings to correspond with what we think. That's where we fall into wrong views. Okay? And then if we teach those to others, and Precious Garland Nagarjuna gives the example of how cows follow each other, you know? You have one head cow and everybody follows the head cow. Yeah. And if that head cow is walking too close to the cliff, or starts down a path that takes all the other cows into the jungle where there's snakes and scorpions, all the other cows are just going to follow that head cow. Yeah. So Nagarjuna says, you know, when you have wrong views, it's not only harmful for yourself. It's one thing if you want to walk along the edge of the cliff, or you want to go down into the jungle with the vipers and scorpions. It's another thing completely to lead other sentient beings there. Yeah, because that is so damaging for them, not just this life, but for many, many lives. Okay, so that's why these calcified wrong views, which amount to, I don't want to believe that, or I don't feel comfortable with that. So it's not even a mind that's willing to examine it. It's a mind that, you know, is rejecting. And that becomes quite dangerous. Yeah. So keeping the precepts, you know, and keeping those 6 harmonies prevent us from falling into wrong views, and therefore prevent us from destroying the Dharma, okay? Either through propagating wrong views or through our bad behavior that makes people lose faith in the Dharma, okay? So all the Buddhist traditions nowadays are having problems with this. And it's not just nowadays, historically. You know, when you read how the precepts were formed, you see not everybody acted so well, and some people had some pretty weird ideas. Yeah, and there's some sutras where the Buddha calls a certain disciple to him and says, "Is it true that you think blah, blah?" And the disciple says, "Yes." And then the Buddha really, you know, tells him why that's a harmful view and corrects it. Okay? So again, this isn't saying that to be a Buddhist or be a monastic, you have to be a card-carrying Buddhist catechism graduate, you know, and defend everything whether you believe it or not. That's not it. Okay? You have to have an understanding of the Buddhist worldview and really find that worldview resonating in yourself. Yeah. So you're not superimposing it on yourself. You're looking at the world through different eyes so that your view gets transformed into the Buddhist worldview. Okay, so this is very important because we tend to take things as external things that are put on top of us that we better follow or else. That some authority put on top of us and said we have to act this way or believe this way. That's not what the Buddha did at all. Okay, that's not what the Buddha did at all. Yeah. He gave the teachings. It's up to us to think about them, you know, and make them our own if we believe in them. Okay. But if we don't believe in them, don't destroy them. Yeah, that's the point. Don't make up something that sounds like Dharma, but isn't Dharma. Yeah. And so, you know, with some of the secular Buddhists, now say we're going to strip Buddhism of all the myths, you know, all the mythology, all the miracles, all the stuff that you can't see and verify for yourself. Yeah. Well, then you're going to take away a lot because our five senses cannot see much in this universe. In terms of what exists, what our five senses see is very little. Okay. And even what they see, our understanding is distorted. Yeah. So sometimes I look up at the sky and you see the stars, and they're these little tiny dots. And then you think, no, they're not little tiny dots. They're huge, huge balls of fire. Yeah? Enormous balls of fire. And the light that I'm seeing took thousands, millions, eons of light to reach planet Earth. So I'm actually seeing the past. Yeah? When you think about it, when you're seeing the stars, you're seeing the past. Because it's so long since that light left the star and came to your eye. Okay? Now, without science, we wouldn't think that at all or understand that at all. We would just think that the stars, vanished in the daytime and came up at night and they were all these little pinholes of light, and that's it. Okay? So my whole point is keep an open mind, and think for yourself. And if you come up with different ideas, that's okay, because there's lots of room for debate within Buddhism. Yeah, you see it all the time. But it's when we actively change the teachings, So sometimes I think, if you want to invent a new religion based on Buddhism, that's fine. Call it by your name. If your name is Joe Smith, call it Joe Smithism. That's great. But don't call it Buddhism if it's stuff that you made up and you're cherry picking. I mean, that's another one of my soapboxes. You're getting to know my soapboxes as I stand on that. This is one of them. Okay. Okay, so, yeah. If we so the precepts help us not to degenerate the Dharma and not to cause disturbance within the Sangha community. Yeah. Then the second main heading there, under the detailed, was to transform society. Okay. Now this one, like I said, I was out to lunch when I ordained about this, except for the idea that I thought everybody should see the beauty in Buddhism and become Buddhist right away. Kind of absolutely no skillful means in my mind at that time. Okay, so why is it important for the Sangha to transform society? And how does the Sangha transform society? Well, why it's important is, first of all, Sangha members come from society in general. Each of us came from general society, didn't we? We grew up, went to school, did the whole thing that, kids do. So where does the Sangha come from? It comes from people who were from general society. So we should try and help general society. We should try and transform it, and repay the kindness of those who brought us up and, taught us, gave us a good moral foundation so that we could eventually become Sangha members. Okay, that's one reason we need to stay in touch with society, because if the Sangha is going to continue, we need to also attract people from society in general. It's not like they're going to fall from the sky, but we have to relate to society, and then people who, hear the Dharma and the Dharma touches them, then they'll want to ordain. Otherwise, the Sangha's going to die out if all we do is just keep to ourselves. Yeah. Then also, so we exist in relationship to society. New Sangha comes from society. Our 4 requisites also come from society. So the 4 requisites are what we need to stay alive: food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. Yeah. And now here we get into where we need to talk a bit, okay? The way the Buddha set it up, was that monastics were wanderers. And if you wander, you don't want to have a huge backpack, okay? So you got your food from, and made yourself dependent on society by going on alms round. The Sangha at the time of the Buddha got their clothes either from discarded cloth that they found on the roadside, or from shrouds in charnel grounds, or after the Sangha started doing the rains retreat and the pravarana, the ceremony at the end of the rains retreat. Then there's another ceremony after that called Katina, where the lay people can offer robes to the Sangha. If you look in the Pratimoksha, there's so many precepts regarding robes, and you can tell that it was very difficult for the Sangha to find cloth at the time of the Buddha and to get robes. Yeah, very difficult. Now, because at that time, really the way they did it, they found little bits here and there and here and there, and they stitched it together. Yeah, and that's how you had a robe. Now we go to the store, we buy a big piece of cloth with no seams. We tear it up, and then we stitch it together so it looks like the robes are supposed to look, like a bunch of patches stitched together. Okay. Because that's the way it really was at the time of the Buddha. Okay, so that came from the lay people. Shelter. Yeah. Once the Sangha started staying put for the 3 months of the rain retreat, then people would offer their houses, they would offer gardens and parks, they would offer, viharas, wherever, whatever, so that the Sangha could live there and stay there during the Varsa, because you aren't allowed to travel during the Varsa. You have to stay put. Okay, and then afterwards, after the Buddha passed away, then the Sangha, started staying in one place more and more, and especially as society changed, the whole thing of wandering kind of wandered, the wandering wandered off. Yeah, and especially because it wasn't suitable in certain climates and certain cultures. Yeah, so Buddhism changed to fit those climates and cultures. But, our buildings here depend on other people. And this is something that for me is just so astounding, because when we moved here, the only buildings, we had Ananda Hall. Yeah, this was the garage, and it was down the hill across from Ananda Hall. We had the barn. We had the little cabin at the end of the barn that he used as storage. That was it. Yeah. Now, first of all, where did the money come to buy the land with those buildings? Didn't come from me. And it didn't come from one big international organization. Yeah. It came from hundreds, and now it's thousands of people who give offerings to the monastery. So that's how we bought the land and the original buildings. When we started to grow, we needed to build more buildings. So we built, the first building we built was the writing studio, then Gotami, then Chenrezi, then Shanty Cabin, then Chenrezi, then Prajna Cottage. So we've built a whole bunch of buildings. And sometimes I stand there in front of the buildings and I go, how in the world did we do this? Yeah, because the amount of money it takes to build these buildings is far greater than I've ever conceived of in the past. And all the money that it took to build the buildings came from people who donated to it. We do not sell one single thing, and we didn't have a raffle, and we didn't have a silent auction. We didn't do anything. All we did was let people know how we live and what we want to do. Right? You're in charge of it. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah, that was, yeah, that was also a big thing, because we do believe in karma. And so we practice generosity in terms of giving teachings. Yeah. And, two of our people are on the board of youth emergency services in our county. We go out and speak different places. We give donations to the Tibetan nuns and Doctors Without Borders and some other organizations. So karmically, there's that. But, I just stand here sometimes and it's like, this is amazing. How did this happen? It's really like magic. Yeah, magic is when you can't explain something. That's what it looks like. It's like magic. Yeah. So it all comes from society. So, we have a responsibility to serve society and transform society and repay this. Because when we built it, our idea, yes, is that it's the home for the monastics. And it's not a Dharma center. It's not a retreat center. We have to keep saying that over and over again. It's not a retreat center. It's not a Dharma center. It's a monastery. But it's open for lay people to come and spend time with us. Yeah. So the lay people knew that they were welcome to come here. Yeah. And they knew they could find the Dharma and hear the Dharma here. And many of our donations, it totally blows my mind, is from people who have never been here, who live in another country, but they have faith in the Dharma and they want to see the Sangha established in the U.S. Yeah. Or from people who live in the U.S. who come once in a while, but not very often, and still many donations from them, as well as for the people who come very regularly. Yeah. But the whole thing is from other people. Yeah? And we're just the people taking care of it so that everybody can use it, so the society can benefit from it. Yeah. So it's not like it's ours. Yeah. My thermos, Well, it's the Abbey's thermos, but my now gets transferred to the Abbey, Okay, medicine. Also, medicine comes from society, doesn't it? Yeah, comes from other people. We go to the doctor. We need resources to pay the doctor, especially in this country. Yeah. We happen to have a bodhisattva dentist who's totally amazing. Yeah, this man is just amazing how much he helps us. Yeah. And, we're dependent on society. So it's our responsibility to transform it. And I don't consider responsibility a burden. Yeah, some people see responsibility as a burden. I think responsibility is, how can I talk about it? Yeah, it's an opportunity. Yeah, it's an opportunity to repay kindness. Yeah, it's an opportunity to repay kindness. Yeah, and I want to repay kindness. So I call that responsibility. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's important, that we try and transform society. How do we do that? One big way is by teaching. Okay? So we have our meditation group in Spokane. It's not a Buddhist group, but it's based on Buddhism. And some of the people who start out there kind of find their way up here. Some don't, but some do. Even the ones who don't, they are really transforming their lives and using the Dharma teachings in their lives, and that influences them and everybody around them, especially their families. Yeah, one of you was telling me, was it you, Venerable Jigme, the story about one woman and how she got something from the class and then it changed with her husband.
There's many examples of that, but she...
Yeah, pass the microphone back. It's important to hear these stories of how we affect people.
We're going through the book Working with Anger, and she was talking about that she had a conflict with her husband for, I think she said 40 years or something, long time. And this thing played out again between them, and she behaved differently. She didn't get angry. She, let's see, what was it? Oh, I know. She can't drive, and she was supposed to go to a yoga class, and her husband was at the store buying groceries, and he was late, and so she missed the class. And in the past, it was this thing about, you don't care for me, you're always late, and you're always thinking of yourself. And this time she didn't do any of that, but was calm and thankful that he bought the groceries. And she said that was the most beautiful evening we ever spent together, because she didn't respond in the usual way.
Yeah, because she went to the UU group. Yeah. Okay. So there's that kind of thing, our prison outreach, different centers and monasteries do different things, but, this is one way that we do it. And really to work for the spiritual welfare of other people. Venerable William has a network of centers in many different cities. They have a program to educate the lay people in the Dharma. Yeah. And what's interesting in Taiwan, the nuns are more numerous than the monks. And the nuns are really very active in serving society. Yeah. It's quite beautiful to see. And at this one award ceremony that we were at in Taiwan, one of the older monks from the Taiwanese Buddhist Association, he was saying that the strength and existence of Buddhism in Taiwan now would not be anywhere close to what it is without the nuns. Yeah. So, it just shows that, they're out there helping society. And, and then the Suchi Foundation, many of you know about that. One nun, I met her many years ago, but she started, it's a long story, but I'll abbreviate it. Anyway, she started she wanted to have a hospital for the impoverished people because she had been at a clinic one day and saw somebody who was bleeding being turned away. And she started a hospital, then another hospital, then it's now an international organization. And when there are natural disasters in different countries, their people get up and fly and take supplies to those countries and help the people in earthquakes and floods and all sorts of things. Yeah, quite beautiful. Yeah. So serving society. So society appreciates. Yeah. Society looks and says, wow, look what these people are doing. It's so beneficial. I heard of one other center that actually got criticized because after, I don't know if it was a typhoon or an earthquake in Taiwan, they didn't help very much. And they got a lot of criticism because, the temples have really been active in society. Okay, so when we transform society by going out and doing this and speaking at colleges and universities and hospitals, people, all sorts of people contact us for to go on some panel and speak for 5 minutes, but which isn't great, but we're becoming the go-to place if you need a Buddhist speaker for an event. Yeah. And that's nice because Buddhism is getting recognized as a religion in the neighboring area, in the surrounding area. Okay, so how does serving society, transforming society by keeping our precepts, what happens? What are the benefits of it? First of all, it inspires people without faith. Okay? So, when we moved here, I think there were 4 Buddhists within 100 miles. You, Susan, Tracy, and Alice. And they were all new. Yeah. And now there's, groups, and there's people who come, and even people who don't call themselves Buddhist hear about the Dharma. So it inspires those without faith, people, and then it advances the practice of those with faith. So through the internet, we have contact with people who have faith and people who don't have faith. That's the chief way, actually, that people meet us is through the internet. And so, again, through teaching, through being an example, through serving, when people have problems, they come and talk to us about their problems. I think even more so in Asia, when people need counseling, they go to the Sangha because there's not so many therapists there. And there's still a bit of a stigma against therapy in Asia. But going to see, a monk or a nun is fine. And we do that too when people have problems. Okay, so we inspire people without faith and advance the practice of those with faith. Yeah, so that's very important because that reaches a whole lot of sentient beings. And we get emails. I'm just really seeing how the internet has allowed us to repay the kindness of so many living beings that otherwise we couldn't have. Yeah. And our BBC talks, I mean, our whole internet thing started because there was one young man who came here he was 19 or 20 years old at the time. And he was a geek. And he said, you should put videos on the internet. And we said, we don't know anything about this. You set it up. So he set it up, got us going, and then he left. And then we had to keep it going, even though we didn't know what in the world we were doing. Yeah, but we've kept it going. And now, I mean, we get emails. We got an email recently from somebody in Turkey, and I mean, from all over the place. You look at Alex Berzin's website. He's not a monastic, but he lives like one. His website translates things into over 20 languages. Really quite amazing. Yeah. Okay. So, transforming society. And then you have His Holiness coming, and I just, when I think of His Holiness talking to the president, he hasn't been here since the election. Well, he was here once since the election, but he didn't go to D.C., and he's not coming at all this year. And I think it has something to do with the karma of who got elected. But before, he would come, and he would sometimes speak to Congress. And that's a big deal, That puts imprints on people's minds. Okay, then the third category was to bring about individual liberation. So this is what I thought. Yeah, that's why we take the precepts. But already you can see, as the benefits of taking the precepts, there are a lot of things that really are much bigger than keeping the precepts. I mean, reaching out and benefiting society is a huge thing. It's not just about us. It's about serving society. Okay, so the benefits to bring about individual liberation of keeping the precepts is, first, it restrains the restive. Okay, so our minds are restive, you could say it, crazy, bouncing off the wall, full of afflictions. Yeah, troublemakers. Our afflictions are troublemakers. So keeping precepts, begins the process of restraining from all the gross actions that we do that can damage people and society. And if you think that as one person you're holding precepts is not a big thing, think about if Adolf Hitler had precepts, or if Joseph Stalin kept precepts, or if Donald Trump kept precepts. Yeah? What one person does can be very powerful. So when we keep precepts, it's a contribution to world peace. Yeah? Because if we don't keep precepts and our mind goes berserky, how many people can we harm? Or will we harm? Yeah. So it restrains the restive. It stabilizes those with integrity. Okay? So, if we have integrity, when we make mistakes, when we have transgressions, then we make amends. We purify. Okay? So, it restrains the restive in the Sangha, which is all of us, so it keeps us from creating negative karma. But when we err, it helps to stabilize us when we have integrity, because then we purify the negative karma we created. We come clean with the Sangha, when we do our fortnightly confession and restoration of precepts, the posada or sojung, So we come clean with the Sangha. In some cases, there are penalties to pay for transgressing certain precepts. We go along with those penalties because we know that the Sangha is putting those penalties on us not to punish us, but to really make very clear that the behavior that we engaged in is not appropriate. Yeah. So for the different categories of precepts, then there's different levels of penalties that you pay. Most of the precepts, are things that we can restore by confessing to another monastic. But many of them, if we acquire material possessions in a way contrary to the precepts, we have to give the object back to the Sangha. And then it's even more embarrassing because then the Sangha gives it to us again. And then you're really aware, I got what I wanted, but it's through this process of doing something, and having to own up to it in front of the Sangha. But then the Sangha, out of compassion, gave it back to me. So I really need to use it very respectfully. Yeah. Then for more serious transgressions, then there's a period of penance where you lose your 35 precepts. The fully ordained people have 35 precepts. Thank you, privileges. Thank you. They both started with P. They're kind of close, Persimmons, precepts. Yeah, privileges. Okay, so the fully ordained have 35 privileges. If you transgress some of the more serious precepts, you lose those privileges for a period of time. Okay, and so you have to sit at the very end of the line, and you have to wash other people's feet because and you have to serve the Sangha and do things like that. And then to be restored to the Sangha, to do the rehabilitation ceremony. For monks, it takes 20 other monks to come. For the nuns, it takes 20 nuns and 20 monks to hear you again say what you did and that you served the penance and now they're going to rehabilitate you. So that becomes a very strong motivation not to break those serious precepts, because it's so difficult to get so many people together and then in front of all of them, And then, of course, the root precepts, if you break those with, all the parts complete, then you're out. Okay. Some Vinaya traditions say that by breaking the precepts, you automatically lose the ordination. The Dharmaguptaka says that you still have the ordination, but you have that parajika offense, and you should return the rest of your ordination because you're effectively out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it says when we recite our precepts, you're not in communion. So it means you can't live with the Sangha anymore. You can't be part of the Sangha anymore. Okay. Then another one to bring about individual liberation is to eliminate present defilements. Okay, when we keep the precepts, it really tames our defilements. It helps us, especially our attachment. Yeah, because to keep the precepts, you have to meditate. You have to work on your mind to keep the precepts because attachment is too strong. And it's especially sexual attachment that takes people away from the Sangha. I haven't met many people disrobe. I haven't met one of them who says, I disrobe because I want to go kill somebody. Or somebody who says, I want to go disrobe so I can rob a bank and steal. Or I want to disrobe because I want to lie and tell people about attainments that I don't have. That's not why, those are the four main ones that are shared amongst the monks and nuns. The nuns have four more. But nobody ordains for that or disrobes for that. The people who disrobe, the prime thing is because they want to have a sexual relationship, a romantic relationship. Okay? So in order to avoid that, you need to work with your mind. And I tell people, do not, until you get to path of seeing, do not think that, your sexual energy is under control and you have no danger of breaking that precept. As soon as you get smug about anything, it comes out of left field and like a pie in your face, Yeah. So, it helps us eliminate our defilements, especially attachment. And if we look, when you have the full ordination, then you have many, many precepts. And it's very interesting to go through. And this is the way Venerable William teaches the precepts, which I think is very effective, is according to groups of precepts. She groups them according to what defilement and what activity they pertain to. Okay? So regarding sex, there's the one of, not having sex. But then there's the thing of, not being alone with a man, all sorts of other precepts. I'm speaking from the nun's point of view here. All sorts of other precepts that keep you from getting to that point where you would, start a romantic relationship. Okay? And then there's different precepts about lying, for example. So the big one is to lie about your spiritual attainments in order to get material wealth. But a lesser one about lying is when you're on Pindapat, to cover your rice with vegetables so you get more rice, or cover your vegetables with rice so you can get more vegetables. Yeah? So we see it, we don't go on Pindapat, but we have all sorts of different ways of, they served something at this meal and I didn't get any, and how can I get it and keep it in my bowl where nobody's going to see it, and, all sorts of ways we act out our attachment. Okay? So when you really work with the precepts, then your attachment goes down. Similarly with anger, there's all sorts of precepts if you're fully ordained against, falsely accusing people of breaking precepts because you're angry at them, hitting other monastics, dragging them out of their room by their hair, but by their hair it's difficult. Yeah. I guess there must be another, maybe by their feet. Okay. Yeah. So all sorts of things, ways that we show anger, of, disparaging people and causing trouble, and being dramatic. You had a fight with somebody and you don't remember what you fought about, but you're still beating your breast over it and criticizing the other person and stirring up the whole community because you're so upset and angry. Or the other ones about lying, like you break a precept, but you pretend you didn't. And then when somebody calls you on it, you go, oh, really? Do we have that precepts? I just learned about that right now. You know, when you've been reciting the Pratimoksha for how many posadas? Okay, so, you know, when we keep the precepts, it really helps to eliminate or at least reduce these defilements. And in doing so, the fourth one under this category is that it prevents defilements from arising in the future, because you get more, you develop some expertise in subduing your defilements. Not perfection, but, you know, we get better at it. Okay? Okay, so the 4 about bringing individual liberation, we're restraining the restive, stabilizing those with integrity, reducing, eliminating present defilements and preventing future defilements. Okay, then, so those were all under the detailed reasons. Then there's a general reason, and there's only one point under the general reason, which is the ultimate goal. Okay, now what is the ultimate goal? If you had asked me when I first ordained, I would have said, my enlightenment. Well, I found out that wasn't the right answer. Yeah. When you're fully ordained, the ultimate goal is for the Dharma to be forever sustained. Yeah. In other words, through our keeping of the precepts and, you know, our own practice, but promoting harmony through the Sangha, transforming society through all these other things. The ultimate goal is to sustain the Dharma and the Vinaya for future generations. Okay. And that, I think, is really important, because when you think about it, how is it that we have access to the Dharma and the Vinaya now when the Buddha lived over 2,500 years ago? How is it that we have access to the teachings and the trainings? It's because other people learned them and practiced them and taught them. Yeah. Because if they hadn't had done that, you know, thousands, maybe probably millions of people historically learning, practicing, transmitting the Dharma from one generation to the next. And that's why we can have Dharma teachings now. And especially the ordination lineages, you know, when you see how they can be, they're very fragile and in different countries have been destroyed at different time periods and then restored. You know, how is it that we can still ordain now? It's through the kindness of all these people whose names we do not know, who are not listed on the lineage thing, yeah, who are not written of in history books, but because they practiced together as a Sangha and kept the Vinaya alive as a functioning Sangha that does the Vinaya rites, due to all these people, then we have the possibility to ordain now. Yeah? So that's a tremendous kindness that all these people showed. And so now we have the responsibility, the opportunity to continue it to future generations as a way of paying it forward. Yeah? So the future generations may even be us in our future rebirth. Yeah, we're lucky. Okay, and even if it isn't us, it's like how many countless other people will have access to the Dharma and the Vinaya in the future. Okay? So we meet people in this life, we plant seeds in their minds, then maybe next life they ordain. There's one man who comes here quite regularly. He's married, he loves the Dharma. He says, next life, I'm dedicating to be a monastic. So that's good. Yeah. It would have been better if he had done it this life, but I think his wife might have something to say about that. Yeah. But he's setting that intention. Yeah. And we're praying for Jane too. You, all of us, you especially, set lots of good seeds in her mind this life, then next life. May she meet the Dharma and the Vinaya, and we'll see little Jane. Except we won't know it's Jane. Yeah. But, yeah, maybe she'll come here, she'll have bangs. That's how you always recognize Jane, is there's bangs down to here. Yeah. Did she always have bangs like that?
There were some certain stages of her life where she got into perms and short bangs, but mostly bangs.
Mostly bangs, okay. So we'll have some little toddler come here with bangs, and we'll say, oh, Jane. Okay. So those are the 10 advantages of keeping the precepts.
Yeah, I have a question about the breaking the precepts so that you lose them.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to purification, in general, if you speak about it, it's said that you can purify anything. Anything can be purified completely.
Right. But remember I talked about the naturally negative karma and then the breakage of a prescribed precept? You can purify, from the Tibetan view, all the negative karma. But when the prescribed precept is broken, you cannot retake it. Okay?
Why?
Because if you could break your root precepts and then take them again, the Sangha would not be celibate. And the precepts would be totally meaningless. Why, keep a precept if you could break it today and take it tomorrow and return to the same status? You wouldn't keep it. Yeah? So it's a way of making us realize this ordination is very precious and we shouldn't just treat it lightly, and that the precepts are designed to be kept. Mm-hmm. Make some sense to you?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it's just, it seems almost incompassionate if you imagine that, somebody makes a mistake and, then he's being sent away from the Sangha, cannot come back anymore.
But there's we have many other precepts that if we keep them well, we won't be in the position of making a fatal mistake. Yeah? So if we make a fatal mistake, it's usually indicative of you don't have sex accidentally. Yeah? Do you? It's an intentional action. I mean, okay, killing you do with intention, right? But not, like I said, not many people disrobe or get kicked out because they killed. Stealing, if Paul Manafort, and what's this Gates guy, if they were monastics, I mean, what they did, it was quite deliberate. Embezzling money, not paying millions of dollars in tax. They didn't do that by accident. Their mind was completely corrupt. You lie about your attainments to get material things, it's not accidental. It's definitely premeditated. Same thing with sex. If you voluntarily, knowingly do that, you have to have some responsibility for it. It would be like people, well, this is the attitude of people who don't have protected sex. Oh, it's not going to happen to me. Oh yeah, let's just be natural. And the next thing you know, you have some kind of STD. Yeah. So having precepts about this, it makes the point of, you got to take this seriously and you've got to be aware of what's going on in your mind. And you can't just plead, oh, it was an accident. Yeah? I didn't really mean to. Yeah, but we were in that room for a long time and it felt really good and it was a lot of fun. Yeah? Huh? It only takes a minute, but getting yourself in that situation takes a while. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So I don't think it's uncompassionate. I think it's actually compassionate of the Buddha, because the Buddha's really saying, be careful. Don't let your mind get out of control. Yeah. And I think that's compassion on the Buddha's part, rather than saying, oh yeah, it happens accidentally, deliberately, but come and get ordained tomorrow, and then you can tell all the other monks and nuns about your sexual experience. Yeah, can you imagine somebody coming back into the Sangha after having an affair? I mean, what are they going to talk about? Yeah. Oh, this guy is coming out now that he, had, I don't know, at least one affair, maybe more. But, oh, I was with this great guy, and we had this affair, and he took me to all these luxury places, and yeah, you come back into the Sangha and you want to talk about that. That's going to really help, isn't it? Okay.
But having said that, Venerable, the bhikkhus can disrobe and then reordain, but women cannot do that. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Okay. Well, we have patriarchy playing a role. Okay. Yeah. And the image of women playing a role. But also, the way Venerable William explained it was the monk Sangha was established before the nuns. So the monks are kind of seen as the leaders of the Sangha. And what happened is, and it's happened historically, but in recent years too, sometimes when there's war in the country, then the monastics, the men have to disrobe and get engaged in the war. And Venerable Shenyan, am I saying the one from Dharma Drum? Yeah. So he disrobed when war broke out in China, and he fought in the army. And then later he went to Taiwan and he reordained, and then, he became quite a well-known master. So they say, because of that kind of thing. That's what Sujana should have done. But I don't know if the Buddha would have been keen on reordaining him. Oh, my parents want a kid, want a grandkid, so I'm going to disrobe, go give my parents a grandkid, play around a bit, and then come back. Some men may do that, but usually, yeah, if somebody disrobes for reasons of relationship, they usually don't reordain. Yeah. 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 If you leave to have a relationship, you're involved in your relationship afterward. So you stay in it. So the situations where I know one Tibetan monk who, after the upheaval in Tibet, he joined the Indian army, and then later he reordained as a monk. So that happens. Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually it's what once somebody is decides to disrobe, usually they don't come back. Yeah.
And I think, Venerable, I think it was at least 5 years ago, we heard that His Holiness the Dalai Lama will not reordain people. That announcement was made. I think I read it in Mandala somewhere, but he won't.
That if they have previously disrobed,
Yes.
that he won't reordain them. Yeah.
And then I was just thinking about the reality, may this never happen, that a bhikshuni creates a fault that results in needing 20 monks and 20 nuns to come here.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't even find a time when the community can get together to meet, just us. And then the expense involved, like who pays the expense? The person who created the fault? So it's just like an impossibility almost now in where we are.
Right. And I think, in the Tibetan tradition, they don't do this anymore. I don't think in Taiwan they do it either, to keep for the Sanghavasesas. Some of the monasteries do. Yeah, the Tibetans don't.
My full ordination, the preceptor who taught us the Bhikshuni precept, she had gone to one of those, mainly a lot of people trying to expiate the Sanghavasesa of traveling alone or sleeping alone. But it was like a very big event. They got the 40 people together and everybody came and went there and did their best. But it was like a one-off event in the 90s or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
So not so often.
Very rare.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really do your best to try and avoid those. Now, she mentioned a precept here. The bhikshunis have a precept not to travel alone or sleep alone or cross water alone or walk. Yeah, enter a village alone. So when I ordained, I immediately went to ask about this because I said, this is going to be real difficult for me to keep. And so they said, do your best. And the society now is different than it was at the time of the Buddha. Because like I was saying before, if you were a single woman walking alone at the time of the Buddha, you were assumed to be a prostitute and up for grabs. Nowadays, thank goodness, we can go into town alone. Yeah. I when I went to get my what was it? The shingle shot. Yeah, the guy in the grocery store complimented me on my outfit. Yeah. So usually it's women who compliment my outfit, but this time it was a man. Nowadays, thank goodness, we can go into town and yeah. We don't have the greatest styles, So it's a different kind of culture, yeah. But and I wanted to get into this point before, sometime during the course. So I guess I'll do it now. Is that there's some of these things that were made for ancient Indian culture that is very difficult to keep now in modern society. So my view is let's look at the meaning of the precept. What affliction was the Buddha trying to address by that precept? And what kind of dangerous behavior was he trying to prevent by that precept? And how can we keep the meaning of the precept in today's, society, although we cannot keep the precept literally? Okay, so, in terms of not entering a village alone, not walking alone, and things like that, I think I explained to you before, we have during the daytime, if you have a good reason and you need to go to town to do errands or the doctors or whatever, you can do that alone. But at nighttime, everybody, men and women, have to have a companion, for safety reasons. And a friend who was a nun, told me she was living in LA and she had been at some kind of Dharma teaching and she was driving back to her place and she stopped to get gas along the way. And it was really scary for her. Some guys at the gas station approached her and, were talking to her in kind of a very uncomfortable way. so, after she told me that story, then, and this was late at night, this was like 10, 11 at night. And so then it's like, yeah, so after, at dark, we need a companion. So you don't find yourself in that situation at a gas station with some guys harassing you. Yeah. So, most of the things we try and think, what's the meaning of the precept, and keep that, even though we can't keep the precept literally.